Hello all out there in YouTube, and say hello to Rufus, the terrier. So yeah, it's been a very busy week, what with Thanksgiving and a lot of dogs to take care of. I'm at Rufus's house for the week, and he's a very good boy. Appropriate for a horror movie channel because you can't spell terrier without terror. Ooh. So he's going to be joining us for this review. I do apologize for not being in my usual location, and I do apologize for not having a proper review for you all this week. It's just like I said, it's been very busy with Thanksgiving and dogs and whatnot. So I didn't have time to do a proper review, but I wanted to do a video for you guys anyway, and so I'm doing a random horror recommendation video. And I do apologize for the lighting and the echo. This is the best place in the house where I could film. So again, I do apologize if there's a bit of an echo, but anyway. So yeah, this is Random Horror Recommendations. It's a series I do when I'm a little too busy to do an actual video. So what I do is I just recommend some of the horror movies that I've checked out within the past few months. I pick the ones that I think are worth talking about a little more and recommend them to you. So here we go. So I got 3 movies to recommend to everybody here. Some you might have seen, some you might have not. These are just, like I said, movies that I've checked out that I thought were worth talking about, and let's get into it. While Rufus is here, I apologize for any noise he makes and if he gets a little rambunctious while we're filming. Yeah, he's a good boy. Anyway, the most professional channel on YouTube. Alright, thanks, buddy. Ooh, let me take care of that there. Alright, so, like I said, I got 3 movies to talk about in this video. And the first one I want to talk about is a movie that I've been wanting to talk about ever since I saw it, and that is Butterfly Kisses. Now, Butterfly Kisses is a found footage horror movie from 2018, and I never hide this. I have a love-hate relationship with the found footage genre. There are a lot of found footage movies that I love, but there's also a lot that I could take or leave. It's a genre that I want to love more than I do. I love the idea of it. I just don't think it's executed well most of the time, and that's just me personally. It's not that I think it's a bad genre, it's just that a lot of times it doesn't work for me personally, and I understand that's a me thing. I understand that it's just me who has some of these problems. A few other people may have these problems too, but I acknowledge the fact that the things that bother me are just that, things that bother me. But when I find a found footage movie that I like to praise it, because like I said, I want to love this genre more than I do. And so I had heard about Butterfly Kisses, and I had been wanting to check it out for a while, so I finally got a chance to watch it, and I enjoyed it very, very much. Obviously, I'm recommending it to you. What I really like about this movie is it does have a twist on the found footage genre. It's not like Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity or other movies like that where someone has found the footage that someone else has filmed and we're watching that throughout the whole movie. This is a found footage movie in the truest sense of the word. It's about a man who has literally found this footage, and he's making a documentary about this footage that he has found and trying to get some form of fame and notoriety through this footage that he has found. So the way the whole thing works is, like I said, this man found a box of tapes, either in his house or his mother's house, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he found all these tapes that were made by this young woman and this man, I believe, named Feldman. The woman's name is, Sophia, and the man's name is Feldman. And they were doing a documentary on this legend called Peeping Tom. And the movie opens in a brilliant way. We see Sophia sitting in her room. She's filming herself. The events of her documentary have already happened. and she's talking about how she doesn't know how much longer she's going to be around, and she's filming this thing as her last manifesto in case something happens to her. And then she says this one line before this segment ends and then the movie actually begins, which really draws you in. She says, "I don't know how much longer I can go without blinking." And that is a perfect hook. It's just like, oh my God, okay, so whatever's happening, this woman cannot blink. And then we follow the guy who has found this footage, and he's doing a documentary on it. He's trying to find out if this footage is real. And he, like I said, he's trying to make his own documentary on it, make his own movie out of this footage that someone else has filmed, and trying to gain fame and notoriety from that. And that's the whole thing that this movie explores. It explores the concepts of found footage movies and people taking advantage of paranormal communities and people who believe to try and get fame through that in some way. The found footage within this found footage movie is very interesting. Like I said, they're doing a documentary on this legend called Peeping Tom. And the way it works is there's this bridge, and legend has it that if you get to this bridge at a certain time, I think it's like midnight or 1 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock because that's considered the witching hour, but if you get there at a certain time and you are able to stare down this bridge for 1 full hour without blinking, then Peeping Tom will appear to you. Now, of course, the concept of not blinking for a whole hour is impossible. I mean, we blink all the time. How many times have I blinked since the beginning of this video? Blinking has become such an unconscious thing, and it's hard to resist. Like, trying not to blink for a long period of time is like the little Dutch boy trying to hold back the dam with his thumb. It's very hard. So the whole idea is, okay, how is it possible to stare down this bridge for over an hour? Now, the legend has it is if you do that, then Peeping Tom will appear to you. But the problem is, every time you blink, he'll get closer and closer to you. So with every blink of your eyes, the closer Peeping Tom will get. Every time you close and open your eyes, he's closer. And the legend has it that he will get right here to your face. And of course, you're the only one who can see Peeping Tom. The only people who can see Peeping Tom are the people he's coming after. And he gets this close to you, and you try not to blink, he will give you butterfly kisses, which will make you blink for the last time, and then he will kill you. Hence the title Butterfly Kisses, which is such an ominous movie title. But the filmmakers in this in-movie found footage movie they find a clever way to do this. They film with their camera for an hour, because the camera, a video camera, essentially works the same way as an eye. And so they film down the bridge for over an hour, and then they see Peeping Tom appear in the footage, and then every time they turn off the camera and then turn the camera back on, Peeping Tom gets closer and closer, and it all has to do with turning the camera on and off, like a blinking eye. So it's an interesting loophole. But the whole concept of this movie is the footage real or not? And the filmmaker is like trying to determine whether it is real or not real, and there are things that of course could have been faked and all that, and again, it's all about obsession, his obsession to become famous using this footage. And then we learn about details that he hasn't been completely honest about, things he's found in the footage that hint at the fact that it could be fake. And I won't spoil whether the footage is real or not, but that's the whole thing with this movie, and I love that. As someone who wants to love found footage movies more, this is a found footage movie that I love. It's literally a found footage movie about found footage movies, and it's an interesting dissection of found footage movies. Coming from someone who can be critical of found footage movies, maybe a little too critical, and I admit that, but someone who is critical of found footage movies, when I say a found footage movie is good, you can take that to the bank, you really can. if you're a fan of found footage movies, then definitely check it out. And if you're more critical of found footage movies like me, then I'd say check it out too. I think you might like this one. So yeah, Peeping Tom. Or, sorry, why do I keep calling it Peeping Tom? Butterfly Kisses. Very good movie. And then next up on the docket, we have a 2023 horror movie. Now, with the horror movies that have been coming out this year, I've been kind of disappointed. I won't say that a lot of the stuff that has come out this year has been bad, but a lot of stuff that has been coming out this year has not worked for me. And I'd like to say I understand that, again, that is a me thing. But I did come across this one a few months ago. It's a horror movie from Thailand, and it's called Home for Rent. Now, this is a movie that I haven't heard too many people talk about, and I think that's a shame because this is really, really good. Like I said, it's from Thailand, and it's this family. You have a wife, a husband, and their young daughter. The wife is down on her luck, and she needs to find a way to make some money until she can get a better job. And it's recommended to her that she rent out her home. Like, she has a house, and it's suggested that she rent it out, take a smaller apartment that's easier to afford, and then make money by renting out her home. And she decides to do this, and basically what we have here is a cult movie. These people rent her house, and then these weird things start going on in her house, and it creates this mystery. And yeah, it's a cult movie, kind of in the style of Rosemary's Baby and other various movies like that, where somebody thinks that the people they're dealing with are part of a cult, and she soon finds out that they are. When I first started watching this movie, it is 2 hours and 4 minutes, which I don't mind movies that are that long. I mean, I've watched plenty of movies that are longer than 2 hours and have enjoyed them very much, but I always say it's like 90 minutes to 100 minutes, that's like a perfect runtime for a horror movie. But of course, horror movies can be longer. So going into this movie, like, you know right away that it's one of these cult movies. The people renting this woman's house are part of a cult. Just like in Rosemary's Baby, the husband, it's hinted at that the husband's getting involved, and they made some kind of deal with the husband and stuff like that. And you know the structure of these movies. We're following the main character who's researching this cult, trying to find out what this cult is doing, and then at the end of the movie they discover the cult shenanigans and all hell breaks loose. Or at least scary stuff, like it leads to a big creepy ending, like in The Wicker Man and Midsommar and things like that. One of the reasons why I praise Home for Rent is because it does things that are different from other cult movies of this nature. So when I first started watching this movie, I was into it. You know, I mean, like, I love a good cult movie, and the woman's trying to find out what's going on. She's suspicious of this activity. She has friends that are going missing, and it's building up to that big climactic moment that you know about in cult movies. Like, okay, she's going to be facing the cult, and we're going to see some trippy, freaky, scary, disturbing shit. But as it was getting to this point, I noticed the runtime. And like I said, the movie's 2 hours and 4 minutes long. And it's building up to this climactic moment, and we're an hour into the film. So I'm like, wait, we're only about halfway through this movie. What's going to happen here? Okay, are we going to get this climactic moment and then more stuff is going to happen after that? Because usually it's like, if you've seen cult movies, you know, once this climax usually doesn't happen until the third act, and we're not at the third act yet. We're like halfway through the second act, but then the movie stops and it flashes back, and we're now following the husband. And I said, wait, what the hell's going on here? Because, again, usually in these cult-like movies where someone's dealing with a cult, we're following the perspective from the main character, the outsider of the cult. observing everything from the outside and slowly learning the disturbing details about this cult. Like, throughout the movie, our main character has seen her husband doing some creepy shit and is just watching it from behind the scenes. But as the movie goes on, we're now following the husband, and we see the creepy things that the husband is doing from the husband's point of view. And that really won me over, because it's so different from what we see in all these other cult movies. And I found that so interesting. It's like, okay, here's a perspective we don't usually see. Usually, when we find out that a character we're not supposed to trust is that character we're not supposed to trust, we just don't trust them and we think they're bad. But here the movie is showing things from his point of view, how he got involved in this cult, how this cult lured him in to do the things that they're asking him to do. But I loved that. I loved the fact that this cult movie switched angles on us and is now showing us a different perspective of things. And then the movie's going on and it's getting back to the climactic moment that we know is coming, and then it switches gears again, and we're now following the leader of the cult. We flash back again, and now we're following the cult leader. Once again, an angle that we never watch this stuff from. Now, this part is not making her sympathetic at all. She is clearly the villain here, but again, it's a perspective that we don't usually see in these cult movies. And that's the main reason why I recommend Home for Rent so much, because of the different approach to cult movies. I was already on board with this movie for the first half. I was along for the ride, I was enjoying myself. Then it switched gears in a good way, then it switched gears again in another good way. And the cherry on top is the ending. Again, I don't want to spoil anything here, but it's such an emotional ending. Like, the way the movie goes, it got me a little misty-eyed because of how things went. It is a legitimately emotional ending, and the only critique I had is I wished the movie ended a little sooner, because it got to this point that I thought, this is a perfect final image. If the movie ends right now, it'll be a perfect ending. Home for Rent, well worth a watch. Like, if you want to check out some good 2023 horror movies, I recommend Home for Rent. If you're an Asian horror fan, check out Home for Rent. If you're a fan of cult movies, check this one out. It's very good. Well worth your time. And the final movie on this list, we're going back to 1971 with Hammer Horror. I do like Hammer horror movies, but I haven't dived into them too much, and I've really been wanting to expand my viewing of Hammer horror movies, because there are many that I love. I love Horror of Dracula, Curse of Frankenstein, The Devil Rides Out is really good. So many of the Frankenstein movies, and I do enjoy the Hammer Dracula series. Peter Cushing is one of my favorite actors, so whenever he's in a movie, I'm gonna have a good time. But again, I've wanted to expand my my Hammer horror repertoire, and I came across this movie that another one I've been wanting to check out for a while, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. So here's the thing, when it comes to classic horror stories, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is one of my favorites, if not my favorite. I mean, in terms of the classic horror stories, I love Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The original book, what is it, the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Go check out the book, either read it for yourself or you can listen to it. You can find a audio version of it here on YouTube. Highly recommend checking it out, because the original book, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, is very different from the movies you've seen and from the concepts we know from pop culture. But I love a good Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movie. Like, the original 1931 version is great. But yes, I have a soft spot for the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde stories. It's one of my favorite classic horror stories. So in this movie, Ralph Bates plays Dr. Jekyll, and he's, you know the whole thing, he's experimenting with things like that, and he's trying to find a cure for so many things, and he discovers a way that can help him to live forever. He creates this elixir, but here's the thing. In order to make this potion that can help him live forever, he needs female hormones, and they need to be female hormones from women who are a certain age, and they have to be a certain freshness after death. So he starts off by having people steal bodies for him and bring them to him, but it eventually gets to a point where he has to kill the women himself to get this hormone. And then when he's able to make this elixir, he drinks it, and it turns him into this beautiful woman that he dubs Hyde, Mrs. Hyde. So instead of turning into a monster, he's turning into a woman who's a sadistic woman that is out for blood. And the way it works is very, very interesting and very unique. It is one of my favorite, it's become one of my favorite versions of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story. So this movie came out in 1971, and there's nudity in this, there's blood in this, and it's such a unique take on the Jekyll and Hyde story. It touches on Burke and Hare a little bit. You remember Burke and Hare, the legendary grave robbers that would rob graves and kill people to provide bodies for scientists and people training to be doctors. It goes into Jack the Ripper territory when Dr. Jekyll becomes a Jack the Ripper-esque character going around murdering women, and then it becomes a Hyde story with Sister Hyde. As he's murdering people, the city or the village or wherever, he is getting more suspicious of him because people have reported this tall man in a hat, and so he's like, oh, they're looking for a man, so he starts drinking this elixir and turning into Mrs. Hyde to go out and murder people because they're not looking for a woman. It's fantastic. It's such a well-done movie. It has that feeling of classic Hammer horror and classic Gothic horror, but with a hint of a slasher movie because he is going out night after night murdering women to get the hormones that he needs. And the kills are so well done. Some of them are a little more graphic than others, but you have those classic moments where you see him like stabbing from the shadows and that classic blood spray on the wall. I love those moments. I love seeing a splatter of blood on the wall. One of my favorite scenes is when he turns into Hyde for the first time. She stands up as Hyde, and it's like realizing she's a woman, and she is looking at her body because her body has now transformed, not only into a completely different thing, but a completely different gender. She takes off her clothes and is looking at her female body, and she's like kind of caressing her own breasts and stuff like that. Because imagine that. I mean, like, you all know, because that's an interesting thing, is like if you were to suddenly transform from one body into another, the first thing you would do is check out your new body, and you would, if you have things that you didn't have before, you would play around with them. I'm sorry, you would. If I suddenly woke up one day with a hand sticking out of my forehead, I'd be playing around with it, and other people in my life would want to shake it and try to have thumb wars with the hand growing out of my head. You know for a fact that if you suddenly had a different part of your body, you would be playing around with it and fondling it and stuff like that. But it does deal with that whole, different personas things, because there are moments where, as Hyde, she is attracted to this man and she is hitting on this man, and then there's a moment where he's Jekyll and he comes across this man, and Hyde slips through a little bit and he starts seeming attracted towards this man. And it's a 1971 horror movie, but this is taking place back in like older times where that kind of stuff was frowned upon a lot. So it's an interesting exploration of these two things. And it creates interesting scenarios because you have this brother and sister. The sister has a crush on Jekyll, and then the brother has a crush on Hyde, and it creates a love square in a way. Like, love triangles, they can work, but a lot of times I think it's the easiest way to cause drama. But here's an interesting way to do that. You have a man in love with Hyde and a woman in love with Jekyll, and you have these two siblings essentially in love with the same person, but two different sides of them. And it's awesome, and it's an interesting way to cause drama, like I said. It has fantastic kills, it has fantastic atmosphere, a very intriguing story. I love Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. It has gone up there as one of my favorite Hammer movies. It's right up my alley. It's creepy, atmospheric, sleazy, with a good amount of blood and a good amount of nudity. Everything I love, from classic horror to sleazy grindhouse, is mixed perfectly in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, so that is right up my alley. I'm sorry, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Oh, so confused. But anyway. But yeah, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. If you want to get into Hammer horror movies, but you're not sure if you're going to be into the older classic Gothic horror movies like Horror of Dracula and Curse of Frankenstein, I think Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde is a good place to start. And it has revamped my urge to watch more Hammer horror movies. I had seen quite a few, but I wanted to see more Hammer horror movies because Hammer horror is a genre that I have been neglecting for a while now, and after watching Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, I am amped up to dive back in and see more of the Hammer horror movies. And so, yeah, there you have it. This is my random recommendations for this particular video. Again, I do apologize for not having a proper video for you all this week. We will have a proper review next week. I will be reviewing Tenebrae. I've been wanting to review that for a while, and we got to get back into the Italian horror. It's been a while since I've reviewed an Italian horror movie, so we're getting back into that next week. But until then, we're going to say hi to Rufus one more time. Yep, he's a good boy. Yep. And thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for the continued support on my channel. It truly does mean a lot to me, and thank you for your patience with dealing with my lack of professionalism whenever I have to watch a dog. But on that note, I hope you all have a great day, and until next time, this is the Maniac and Rufus here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die. Yeah, he's a good boy.